Impact segment tonight, as you may know, Yale University is an Ivy League stalwart, very prestigious institution. But now there are two controversies that may harm Yale. First, the university is taking John Calhoun's name off one of its residential colleges. Calhoun was vice president under John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson and served in the Senate for many years before the Civil War. He was an ardent proponent of slavery. However, John F. Kennedy named Calhoun one of the greatest senators in history. I disagree with that assessment. Also, the Yale Daily News, the student paper, is backing away from a story it printed that says the African American Cultural Center at Yale will honor the Black Panther Party as part of Black History Month. Joining us now from New Haven, Connecticut, Gabby Cujo-Wilkes, a Yale graduate student, and here in the studio, Kyle Tierney, a senior at Yale. So John Calhoun, he was associated with Yale way back, gave him a lot of money, had a college named after him, right?
Yes, sir.
But no more.
No, sir.
What happened?
It started about 2 years ago. The Calhoun renaming process really picked up steam. Then they decided last April to not rename Calhoun. They had a whole committee established. Over the summer, they established...
Who's they?
The administration, the Yale Corporation, and President Salovey.
All right. So this was basically faculty members that did this?
Not so much faculty members. Faculty and students wanted the name changed.
Because of the slavery issue, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's gone. Now, Gabby, I assume you support the banishment of John C. Calhoun, correct?
I support the renaming of the college.
Okay.
We're still going to be remembering his legacy. We're not erasing him, but I do support the renaming of the college.
Now, you know there's a lot of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they were slaveholders, and a lot of things named after them.
Yeah, well,
what's the difference?
He's not just a slaveholder. He's not just someone who was racist. He really built his legacy around inequality. He's really an individual whose lifelong work was around inequality. He wasn't even really for the parts that say that all men are created equal. And so when you think about residential colleges, this is where the students are formed. This is a place of community. And so when you think about those names that we want on those institutions, with those residential colleges within our institution, it's important to think about that history.
So you're distinguishing between the legacy of Calhoun and Jefferson and Washington. Why do you think Yale even named a college after Calhoun? Surely they knew, because he was not a quiet guy. It was all pretty much up front with him. Surely they knew who he was. Why did they name it?
I'm sure they did know, and you know, it's 2017. I know the conversation that we're in now, which is we can look at our legacy, we can look at our history, we can make decisions based on who we are now as Yale University, and that's what the administration has done.
So you don't have any thought about why they would put up Calhoun as a guy worthy of having a college named after him? You don't know?
I have a lot of questions about decisions that have been made before 2017.
So let's turn to the Black Panthers. The Yale paper booted it, right? There's no honoring going on in New Haven about the Black Panthers. What is there?
I think it's students who want to be a part of a movement, and they want to compare them, you know, overthrowing or getting Calhoun renamed, being part of these random protests against things that they think that they represent civil rights.
All right, but where do the Black Panthers come in? It's Black History Month. Why are the Panthers even being mentioned?
It looked like a few students went in the fall to go visit a thing at Cal Berkeley that was presenting a story about the Black Panthers.
And they're going to report back to Yale about what their experiences are?
That seemed to be what the...
That's not a problem.
And I actually was a part of that cohort.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you went out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I went out there. It was great. We were in Oakland. It actually wasn't affiliated with Berkeley. It was with the Oakland Museum, and it was a conference celebrating 50 years of the Black Panthers forming. And we went out there as students to really learn the history, to chronicle it, to understand what's going on. You're probably familiar with the May Day event that took place back in the 70s at Yale, and Yale has a long history of activism. So we went as student archivists to go out and learn the information about the school.
Did you come away with a favorable impression of the Black Panther movement?
Oh, absolutely. They were so resilient.
Let me have you react to a soundbite that we have from Stokely Carmichael, who is associated with the Panthers. Roll it.
Okay.
We have to recognize who our major enemy is. The major enemy is not your brother, flesh of your flesh, and blood of your blood. The major enemy is the hunky and his institutions of racism. That's the major enemy.
The hunky is the white man, based on a pig reference. And you must know that Alex Rackley, who was a Black Panther in New Haven, was murdered there, allegedly by other Black Panthers, and that was back in 1969. And there's a long legacy of violence associated with even the new Black Panthers today. So how can you look favorably upon that group?
Well, there's a long history of racism in this country, and so I think we can all agree that racism exists in this country.
But I think maybe the Black Panthers are part of that racism with their anti-white bent.
Well, the Black Panthers, actually, it wasn't about anti-white. It was pro-black. It was about them making sure that they provided for their community. There were food programs. There were health care programs. The language and the rhetoric is, you know, your choice. We're not using that language and rhetoric now. They certainly were not using that rhetoric at the conference.
It makes me a little...
There's racism.
It makes me a little uneasy that a very intelligent woman like yourself could even think that these people were worthy of being considered in Black History Month. Because they're not that much different than the Ku Klux Klan. They're not.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they're not. If you look at the history...
That's interesting.
It is. If you look at the history
and all the shootings... You're referring to and how you pair the two.
Well, if you look at the history of the Black Panthers and all the shootings, all the violence, police officers killed, all the rhetoric, which is just over-the-top anti-white, and you compare it to the violence and anti-black rhetoric of the KKK, there's not a lot of difference. And the KKK did community programs as well. I'll give you the last word because I really appreciate you coming on. But I would ask you a personal favor to me. Reassess the Black Panther situation because there are groups that are far, far better for you to tout as helping African Americans. But go ahead, last word.
Well, yeah, last word. What I will say is that the Black Panthers were pro-black. They made sure that their community was provided for. Every organization makes decisions in the time that they are in. However, at Yale, we are studying and archiving and making decisions for ourselves about what our future looks like. And I'm privileged to have been able to be a part of that cohort that went to Oakland to study that living history.
Kyle, Gabby, thank you very much. Directly ahead.